Hey guys, in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create a melting, dripping text effect, all in Adobe Illustrator. Hey guys, you're watching Dansky, the place to be to develop your creative skills, and in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create a gooey, melting, dripping text effect, all in Adobe Illustrator. I think this is a really cool effect. Very kind of clean, minimal, geometric, rather than like realistic liquid per se. But we're going to jump into it now, and hopefully you enjoy it. So you can see here, I'm now in Illustrator. I've got a new document, 1920 by 1080, and there's an example up here of the type of effect that we're going to be creating. So of course, first thing, we're going to need some letters. So let's go over to our type tool and just click anywhere on the artboard and we'll type some text. Now, because this is a dripping, melting text effect, I'm gonna choose the word ice and just hold Shift, scale this up. Holding Shift keeps everything proportional, otherwise it will like distort out of shape, and we definitely don't want that. So not really feeling the font at the moment, Myriad Pro, that is the default. We're gonna change this and I'm gonna go with Bebas Kai. This font seems to pop up in a lot of my tutorials. I'm really digging this font at the moment, so we're gonna use it again. So we've got some text. Now what I'm gonna do is go up to type, down to create outlines. Now when you do this, the font is no longer going to be editable, unfortunately. I know, sad, but we can do some other things that we couldn't do before whilst it was editable. So let's go ahead and click this. So this is now no longer recognized as editable text in Illustrator, but just a series of shapes. So we've got our ice text. Something else that you can do in some of the more recent versions of Illustrator as well is with a selected object like this, you can then go up here and grab the direct selection tool, and you'll see these extra circular points here pop up around all of the inside edges. And what you can do is actually click on these and drag towards the center of the selected object, and you can round off the corners. So you could do this all the way until the lines turn red, which means you cannot round this off anymore. Or we could go for something really subtle, just to complement the kind of melting drip effect that we're creating. So let's round these off slightly, and of course you can zoom in if you want to kind of see this in more detail. So we've just rounded off the letters there, and if I move this up, now we're going to focus on creating the drips. So I'm just going to go over here. So I've got this reference image here, just so I can remember exactly what I'm going to be doing. And I'm going to start by left clicking and holding where the rectangle tool is. You can see lots of other tools underneath. We'll grab the ellipse tool, left click and hold Shift. Holding Shift keeps this proportional with regards to height and the width. So we're going to create a perfect circle, and I'm actually going to swap the fill and the stroke. So there we go, I can see this, and I can just zoom in a little bit more. And something else that I'm going to do before I go ahead, in the more recent versions of Illustrator, if you go up to View, by default you have Snap to Pixel and Snap to Point turned on. Now, me personally, I don't like it snapping to both because it can get a little bit confused sometimes, so I'm just going to turn off Snap to Pixel. I only want Illustrator to snap to the anchor points in my document. So now I've done that, what I can do is I can drag this shape, and while I'm dragging, I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift. Alt creates a copy, and Shift keeps it in line, make sure it doesn't go all over the place like this. So Alt and Shift, and you'll see it snaps there to that point. And then what I can do is press Command or Control D on the keyboard, and it will repeat that last action. So we'll do this a couple of times. And what I can actually do now is grab the direct selection tool and just select, let's say, this top anchor point, hit delete or backspace on the keyboard, and now I have like a semicircle segment. So what I can do now is do the same over here, but on the bottom anchor point. And remember, I'm using the direct selection tool, and I've now created this wavy line. In fact, I can move this over here. We'll just separate that one, and I can use the direct selection tool again to do something like this. In fact, what I can actually do is I can do the same technique with this quarter segment here. Remember, hold Alt to create a copy, and we'll rotate this, and of course free rotating spins it 360 degrees. We can hold Shift on the keyboard and it will snap to 45-degree rotations. If I just zoom in, what I can do now. So we're kind of essentially creating all of these shapes just using circles, half circle segments, quarter circle segments. And I'm just going to zoom in a bazillion percent. There we go, 1,000, 200%. Snap that so it lines up. And what I could do now is I could grab the pencil, for example, click on this point here, and it lets me draw a line. I can hold Shift and it will snap that so it's perfectly vertical. And again, you can see that snap to point is really useful because it helps me line everything up. And then what I can do, actually, I think I'll just complete that. So I can click, and you can see there's like a little kind of anchor point symbol next to the pencil. That indicates that I'm going to be completing this and closing this shape. So this is now like a complete closed shape, and I can swap the fill and the stroke. And it looks like that, which is odd. Why does it look like that? Okay, well, we can try and figure this out. So I've probably screwed up somewhere. But this is good because it's a chance to show you how you deal with these kinds of problems. So if we press Command or Control Y on the keyboard, that will take you into outline mode. So we can see here the path all looks fine. Okay. So the path is all fine, but we've got this one random segment here. So I can switch between preview and outline mode. And you can see, well, we've got this one random segment. So if I just drag over everything, try going to Object, down to Path, select Join, and that seems to have fixed it. So what it did was it took that quarter segment circle that wasn't part of everything else, and it just joined all the paths up. So it kind of joined it over here and over here. What you can also do is select two end anchor points with the direct selection tool. Use that same technique and it will just join them together. And if they're touching, if they're on top of each other, you won't see any difference. They will just be joined as part of the same path. So there we go. That was a good mistake, I think. So we've now created one drip or melting thing. So what I like to do with this kind of text effect is to create a few of these little drips, and then you can reuse them across different letters. You might have a much longer word, more letters. Just create a bunch of different presets and then you can repeat them across all of the letters, just so you're not creating like a custom drip for every single letter, because some letters will have multiple drips on them. That sounds so weird to say that. You don't say that in like life. How many drips has this letter got? It's probably not even grammatically correct, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. So we'll go over here. What we'll do is we'll try this out. Now I'm going to leave this over here, but I'm going to hold down Alt, click and drag. Remember, it creates that copy. And we'll swap that fill and the stroke round. It displays correctly now. And we can now position this and it lines up nicely. And okay. So let's just have a look. So I kind of need a smaller drip here. So what I could do is hold Alt and drag. We'll pop this one over here. So it's just finding the places that I can put this. We could maybe put one of these up here as well. And perhaps I could line this up with the right edge. Now, if it doesn't snap like this, I'm trying to snap it, it doesn't snap, that's totally fine. But we can use that technique of zooming in thousands of percent, Command or Control Y, and we can go into outline mode. And I'd love to do this. We can go up to like nearly 10,000% on the zoom, and we can just move that up and make sure it's in line. So when you're zoomed in at 10,000% and it's looking great, you know that when you zoom back out, you're not gonna have any problems. So let's just do the same over here. We'll just move that up, holding Shift. It's a little bit out. But if I bring this to the left and hold Shift and select the letter E as well. Oh no, we can't use the snap align. I was going to use the align tools to snap that, but because we have this bit sticking out, we can't do that, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is, rather than move this up and try and line this up, because then of course we'll have to realign this kind of horizontal bit here, this is where I like to get one bit in line and then use Shift on the keyboard and the arrow keys. So I'm going to move this up twice. So holding Shift, pressing the up arrow key twice. And then I can zoom in. And what I can do is drag this to the right so it lines up perfectly. And then I can hold Shift on the keyboard and press down twice. And there we go. It lines back up exactly where it was. And then I know that this one is lined up as well. So it's kind of like a workaround. If you line one up manually and you try and line the second one up manually, you've then got to go and manually line up the first one again. But if you use the Shift technique on the keyboard, hold Shift, use the arrow keys to move it out of place, then you can kind of do both of them without any unnecessary work. Hopefully that made sense. Very long, wordy explanation, but... So now I can come out of outline mode. And what I could do actually is just grab the direct selection tool, click on this anchor point and just hold Shift and drag that straight up. Yeah, it skews the shape, so we don't really want to do that. So what I'm actually going to do is just grab the pen tool and go to select, deselect, and then just draw another custom shape. So this is like a triangle. You can see it here. It's a really terrible triangle, but it doesn't matter because this is all going to be merged together. So what I could do now, for example, is select the triangle, this custom shape, this fill shape that I've created, hold Shift, click on the drip, and then from the Pathfinder panel on the right, select the top left option, which is Unite, and it'll just merge this into one shape. If you're on an older version of Illustrator or you don't see any of these panels with the new contextual properties panel, just go up to Window, and you've got all the different panels here. So you could click Pathfinder and then you can see here that we get all of these different options. It's just on the later version of Illustrator, you have it all in this like contextual panel, but they're all there even if you're on an older version. Okay, so we've got a drip there. We've got this one over here. I think I might change this slightly. So we'll try and, there we go, that snaps. If it doesn't snap for any reason, just hold Shift, select both objects, and then you can use the alignment option here to align it to the left. And of course, there's an alignment panel at the top of the screen as well, as we just talked about. And then I can bring this up maybe. I think I might even delete, maybe bring this anchor point in. So I'm just using the handles to modify this anchor point. Something like this, maybe. So then this curve plays off quite nicely against the curve that I created when I rounded off the letters at the beginning. So there we go, that's not too bad. In fact, what I can actually do now is I can hold Alt and drag and just pop that one up against there, so we're reusing it. If I wanted to, I could select it, go Object, Transform, Reflect this along the vertical axes, and it would flip it around just to create some more variation. And then again, we can go and do the whole lining up thing. So remember, Command or Control Y, we go into outline mode. The path looks great in outline mode. In fact, if ever in doubt, just jump into outline mode, check it's correct, and then you can jump back out. That's how I like to work. And this path here is slightly out, so you could spend a little bit of time just finessing that if you wanted. You can see there, just using the direct selection tool to select that anchor point, move it in place, and then just adjust that handle. We come out, boom, we've got a nice smooth curve. Okay, so we've got a little bit more, I was going to say drippage then. We've got a bit more drippage on the letter C. So we'll have a go at doing something here. So what shall we do? So we'll create another copy here. We'll create another preset, seeing as we did talk about that at the beginning. And if we just drag over here, we'll delete this with delete or backspace on the keyboard. We'll select this point here with the direct selection tool. And then what we can do is we can select this here. We can go to Object, Transform, Reflect. And rather than just reflecting across the vertical axes, we can actually check Preview and click Copy. That's another way of doing it. And then we'll just drag this out. And again, you can see snaps to point, fantastic. We do need to join these up though. So as I did mention earlier, another way of doing this, because they're still two separate shapes, is we use the direct selection tool. The shortcut for that, by the way, is A on the keyboard. We just drag over these two anchor points where they meet. Go to Object, Path, and Join. It will join them up, and now this is one shape. Okay. So now I want to make one of these drips a little bit longer. So if I try and move that, you can see it skews this out of shape, which isn't ideal. So let's try something different. We'll grab the direct selection tool. We'll select these points here. We'll go to Edit and Cut. This will copy it, but also remove it. So it copies it to the clipboard for you to paste, but it also removes it from the document. And then we can go to Edit, Paste in Place. And what I can do then is just move this up with the arrow keys and then use the direct selection tool to just remove these. So we'll move this up, just moving that with the arrow keys again. And then I could, let's hold Alt and Shift to drag this and create a copy. Go to Object, Transform, Reflect. Reflect it along the vertical axes. So you can either create a copy or you can just create the copy and then flip it. And you'll notice in this tutorial, I'm using lots of different techniques to do the same thing. This is deliberate, so there's lots of different ways to do the same thing in Illustrator. So it's just really kind of finding what works for you. So then direct selection tool again, I can hold Shift and drag this down, make this all snap together. And then maybe we'll get rid of this one. Hold Alt and Shift, and I'll just flip this over. So I think you get the idea now. So I'm just going to try and speed through creating this one. So essentially what I like to do is create lots of pieces. So you can have quarter segments, half segments, lines, and then you can kind of piece them together to make, what am I saying? You can piece them together to kind of make all of these custom shapes. And I realize now, actually, what I've created here is exactly the same as what I had at the beginning. However, with the direct selection tool, I can now drag over these points here, hold Shift, and use the arrow keys. So before, what happened was there wasn't this vertical line in here. So if I did that and tried to extend this out, it just distorted the curve. But because we've added this vertical line, I can now just drag over this bottom area with the direct selection tool and extend that out and extend this as much or as little as I need to. So even though it looks the same, it's actually different. And we can grab the pen tool and let's just close this shape off here. You can see that icon again just indicates we're going to close the shape. This is where we check if it works. Well, it's not going to work because we've got lots of different pieces. So let's just drag over everything, go to Object, Path, and select Join. Then we'll swap the fill and the stroke. This is the moment of truth. There we go. It works. It works. Thank you. Oh, praying to the design gods. Thank you that this worked. So we could move this one out of the way and then we'll hold Alt and drag, get a copy of this. There we go. I might just use the direct selection tool to select these different anchor points. You can select multiple anchor points with the direct selection tool by holding Shift and clicking on them. Now we can bring that down. So you can see that I can really use the direct selection tool to modify all of these different points to just tailor this exactly how I want. So if I wanted to have like a custom drip here, what I could do is I could do something like this, but maybe I don't want this to be like perfectly straight. We could do that, but it's not really as smooth as it could be. So we could do something like this where we grab the pen tool, click on this anchor point, and you can see because we've got snap to point on and the smart guides, it highlights the path. And we could just make that curve like this. And it wants to continue this curve. We can hold down Alt or Option on the keyboard and just click, and it will cut that. We can follow it up with a straight line and just create. It doesn't matter what shape you create because it's all just black using the same color. So you can create any kind of goofy shape. And there we go. So it just has like a slightly smoother join to it. And we could copy that and flip it and use it over here as well. Or what we could do is just really quickly do another one. So pen tool, just go up here a little bit, curve it round, hold Alt or Option, click, and then just fill that with a goofy shape. It doesn't matter because it's all black. In outline mode, it will look like this, which is quite messy, but we can select all of these by holding Shift as we select them. And then remember, from the Pathfinder panel, click the top left option, which is Unite, and it just combines those from this into a single shape. In fact, at the end as well, you can combine all of the drips with your letters. It's a more permanent thing, but it's just a nice way to kind of finish off a project if it's all kind of, the paths are all tidy and all that stuff. Attention to detail, I'm sure you know all that stuff. Okay, so well, this is looking kind of cool. Let's maybe hold Alt and drag. We'll add another one over here. And I'll try and finish this up really quick because this is probably quite a long tutorial. There we go. So once you've created a few drips, a few different pieces, it does become much, much quicker. And we'll just flip this around here. Maybe pop that over here on the left, see how it looks. We'll just create another goofy shape again with the pen tool. Okay, I think that looks all right. That looks fine. And then we're just going to add a few circles as well. So let's just add some actual droplets. So remember, ellipse tool, left click, hold Shift to create a circle. Make sure these are positioned centrally underneath. Of course, they must be central. Okay, it's all right. I'll calm down now. I'm very particular about my alignment and things being lined up. All right. It's okay. If you don't line things up properly, it's fine. Just don't tell me. It's okay. In fact, I'm doing this a little bit manually. I'd probably take a bit more time to line this up. And maybe we could move one over here. We could shrink this down a bit smaller. So we'll just hold Shift to shrink that down a bit smaller. So you can really play around with this. And as I say, you can kind of reuse a lot of these elements and kind of almost create like a drip effect toolkit, if you like. And you can just have these few preset options that you can repeatedly pull from. So there we go, that's my text. You can of course spend ages doing this, but for now, let's throw those over there. In fact, I'm not gonna throw them over there because I think we're nearly done. So I'm just gonna delete them, but you can keep yours over there somewhere safe. And when I'm totally finished, what I would do is I would jump back into outline mode, Command or Control Y on the keyboard, and you can see this looks quite messy. Now you can select all of this, go to Object and Group. That's one thing I would probably do because then you can ungroup it. You've still got all the pieces that you can move around. But if you're totally happy, you're set on your design and you're like, this is brilliant, I'm not gonna need to change this any further. Then what you can do is again, Pathfinder panel, top left option, Unite, and it combines them all together. And then you can jump out of outline mode and it looks brilliant. And lastly, what I'm gonna do is actually just mimic these colors here. So if I select this ice dripping design that we've created, or that I've created. You haven't done anything yet. You've got to go and do the tutorial. So we've got the ice, and I'm going to use the eyedropper tool just to sample this color. And then what I can do is double click on this. If you want to follow along with this video exactly, you've got the 6-digit reference there. Just copy and paste that into the color picker and you'll have the same color. And from the swatches panel, I've got mine docked over here. I'm going to click new swatch at the bottom. Global is checked, we're all good. Click OK. And then I'm going to do the same for the darker blue as well. So just sample that color. It's active in my color picker. Click the new swatch icon. Click OK. And in fact, I can delete this now. We're finished with that. And the last thing that is left to do is position this in the center, exactly in the center. That looks pretty good to me, I think. And then just left click and hold, grab that rectangle tool. We'll draw a big old shape like this. And then we'll fill that with the darker blue. And of course it's on top at the moment. New shapes do go on top of previous shapes. So we'll just go up to Object, down to arrange, center back, and there we go. Incredibly lengthy tutorial is complete. So there we go. That's how to create a drippy, melting text effect, all in Illustrator. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you've got any questions or comments, you know what to do. Drop those down below. But as always, like this video if you enjoyed it. Take care. See you next time.